Have you ever wondered why you feel like you constantly have to prove who you are? Why you wake up every day with the sensation that you need to please, explain yourself, justify your existence to a world that never seems satisfied with you? Today, you're going to discover why the problem isn't you, but the version of yourself you've built to survive. And more importantly, how to break free from that invisible prison to find a peace you didn't even know existed. Imagine for a moment that you could walk through life without that constant burden of having to be perfect for others. Without that anxiety that if you don't respond immediately, you'll be judged. Without that exhausting need to always be available, always present, always ready to solve everyone else's problems except your own. How would that feel? Because it's not an unattainable dream, it's your birthright. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to reclaim it. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists in history, discovered something that forever changed our understanding of the human mind. He discovered that most of us live our entire lives without truly knowing ourselves. We live identified with what he called the persona, that mask we put on to be accepted by the world. But that mask becomes a prison when we forget we can take it off. And here comes the first major revelation you need to hear. The reason you feel so exhausted, so empty, so disconnected from yourself isn't because you're weak. It's because you've been living someone else's life. You've been so busy being who you think you should be that you've completely forgotten who you actually are. Think about it. Since you were small, you were taught that your worth depended on how much you pleased others. If you were obedient, you were good. If you caused trouble, you were bad. If you were always available to help, you were loved. If you needed space, you were selfish. And so, little by little, you built an identity based not on your essence, but on external approval. But here's the problem. That excessive availability you think is a virtue is actually a trap. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you respond immediately even though you're exhausted, every time you explain yourself when you owe explanations to no one, you're giving away a piece of your vital energy. And at the end of the day, what's left? Exhaustion, frustration, and a sense of emptiness you can't explain. Does this sound familiar? How many times have you ended the day feeling like you've run an emotional marathon without achieving anything truly important for yourself? That's not a coincidence. It's the direct result of living from the ego, from that false identity that believes it needs constant approval from others to exist. Jung understood that when you live from this place, you become what he called a receptacle for projections. That is, people don't relate to you, they relate to the idea they have of you. They see you as the one who always helps, the one who never says no, the one who solves problems. And you, without realizing it, accept that role because you're afraid of disappointing. But let me ask you something that will change your perspective forever. Do the people who get angry when you finally set a boundary really love you? Or do they love what you do for them? Are those relationships that break when you stop being available 24 hours really relationships? Or were they emotional transactions? Here's an exercise that will reveal something powerful to you. For the next 3 days, before saying yes to any request, ask yourself this question. Am I saying yes because I really want to help, or because I'm afraid of rejection? Be brutally honest with yourself and observe how many times the answer is the second option. And this brings us to a fundamental concept that Jung developed about psychic energy. He didn't see the human mind as a machine that simply reacts to stimuli without consequences. For Jung, our psyche is like an energy system, and every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a part of that energy. The crucial question is, are you consciously choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Because every time you react impulsively, every time you get involved in unnecessary arguments, every time you try to please people who don't value you, you're wasting your inner strength on what doesn't nourish you. Jung was very clear about this. What you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself. People who live emotionally exhausted aren't weak, they're misdirected. They've allowed their energy to drain in 1,000 different directions without ever asking themselves if that's really taking them where they want to go. Do you know what happens to someone who lives with scattered energy? They become vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable in this way, you become easy prey for manipulative, opportunistic, emotionally needy people. They can sense that you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix the world, and they take advantage of it. But a healthy psyche, according to Jung, is one that knows how to keep energy within the system. This means knowing how to say no without guilt, knowing how to remain silent without feeling cowardly, knowing how to observe before acting. Because true power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to act. Think about the people you truly respect, those who, when they enter a room, command attention without saying a word. What do they have in common? They don't react to everything. They're not constantly explaining themselves. They don't seek approval. They have something Jung called presence, which is the direct result of well-conserved energy. Before we continue, I want you to do something. If this message is resonating with you, if you're recognizing patterns in your life that you want to change, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Because what we're going to explore next will challenge everything you thought you knew about relationships and about yourself. Now let's talk about something most people don't want to admit, but is absolutely crucial for your liberation: silent manipulation. You think you're in control of your decisions? You think your emotional reactions are conscious choices? But the truth is much darker. Most of your responses are programmed, and there are people who understand this and manipulate you easily. Opportunistic people don't need to shout, threaten, or force situations. They simply activate the buttons you've left exposed, and you react predictably. Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot see in themselves. But there's another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project onto you, you become the receptacle for those images. And the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank screen for these projections. Do you know that person who only approaches when they're in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day? That friend who praises you, but only while you're useful to them? None of this is coincidence. They're not relating to you. They're relating to the idea of you, to the role you've accepted to play. And why do you accept it? Because you're afraid. Afraid of disappointing, afraid of not being loved, afraid of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen in screams. It happens in the silence of guilt. When you feel you owe something to the other, when you believe you need to be available, that you need to help, that you need to understand, even when it's destroying you inside. Here's the central point that will change your life. The manipulator doesn't need to control you. They only need you to keep reacting in the same predictable way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks completely. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls off. And this leaves people completely bewildered because they no longer know who you are. And worse yet, now they're forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. Your new unavailability becomes a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror for their own shortcomings. Jung said something profound. We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle of codependency, the other's shadow begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape from their own emotional responsibility. But let me ask you something crucial. Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to endure the uncomfortable silence that comes after the break? Because it's precisely in that silence where a type of power is born that you've never experienced before. Here's a mantra I want you to repeat every time you feel the temptation to return to your old patterns. My peace is worth more than any false connection. Say it out loud. My peace is worth more than any false connection. Feel it in your body, because this simple phrase can free you from years of conditioning. And this brings us to the transformative power of conscious silence. The modern world is incredibly noisy. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to respond quickly. Everyone wants to win meaningless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there's a power that few know, and even fewer master. The power of conscious silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that isn't absence, but amplified presence. Jung saw silence not as a void, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop constantly reacting, you begin to truly observe. And by observing, you see patterns that previously went completely unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, manipulation games, cycles of self-sabotage that you'd been repeating without realizing it. Silence allows lucidity. And lucidity is dangerous for those who live by controlling you emotionally. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond immediately, when you don't explain yourself, when you simply disappear from the conversation? It's not because they really miss you. It's because your silence takes away their control of the narrative. As long as you keep talking, you stay in their game. But when you're silent, you completely change the rules. And that unbalances anyone who thrives by feeding off your emotional reactivity. True silence isn't the absence of voice. It's mastery over your own energy. It's the refusal to be dragged down by another person's chaotic emotions. It's the conscious choice not to participate in battles that aren't worth your internal wear. Jung understood that individualization, the process of becoming who you really are, requires this distancing from collective noise. Because only in silence can you hear yourself without the constant interference of the outside world and its endless demands. But don't fool yourself, silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played in their lives. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own needy projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, even arrogant in some people's eyes. But all of this is simply the reaction of those who never wanted to deal with your real depth, only with your practical utility. And here's the truth that hurts but liberates. The more emotionally mature you become, the more selective you become with your words and energy, because you understand that every interaction is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your inner truth. Sometimes silence isn't withdrawal, it's sovereignty. It's the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone because they've found their value in their own essence, not in external opinion. Silence is deeply uncomfortable for others because it forces them to deal with their own thoughts, with their own internal noise they've been avoiding. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could ever reveal. You don't need to explain your absence, it explains itself. And those who feel threatened by it reveal exactly how much they depended on your emotional imbalance to maintain their own sense of control over you. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that disturbs the other. It's the silence that rebuilds you from within. The silence that connects you to something much deeper than external approval. It's in this internal space, free from the exhausting demands of others, where you begin to recover your vital energy and reconnect with your authentic essence. If you've made it this far and feel something inside you awakening, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Because real transformation multiplies when we share it with others who are ready for change. But now let's talk about the most important process of all, what Jung called individuation. This is the journey toward becoming who you really are, beyond all masks, beyond all expectations, beyond all the conditioning you've carried for years. Individuation isn't an abstract concept. It's a practical process of liberation. It's the moment when you decide you're no longer going to live your life trying to fit into the image others have of you. It's when you recognize that you've been playing a character for so long that you'd almost forgotten you were an actor. But here's something you need to understand. This process requires you to go through what Jung called the dark night of the soul. It's that period of confusion, loneliness, and apparent loss you feel when you begin to strip away everything you're not really. When you decide to become unavailable for others' drama, when you set clear boundaries, when you stop responding to every emotional demand, something profound begins to happen. First comes a silence that can feel terrifying. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you're being too harsh, if you're losing people who supposedly loved you. But gradually, that silence transforms. It begins to clean, to calm, to heal parts of you that you didn't even know were wounded. And then comes a loneliness different from anything you've experienced before. It's not the loneliness of absence, it's the loneliness of total presence, your own. It's the loneliness of the strong, the loneliness of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space where there was once constant confusion, crystalline clarity enters. Where there was once chronic anxiety, deep peace enters. Where there was once desperate need, a new kind of strength enters. The strength of being complete within yourself. Jung understood that the process of individuation requires you to temporarily distance yourself from the collective, to disidentify from the social mask, to walk alone for a necessary time. And that's exactly what you're doing when you decide to become emotionally unavailable for what doesn't nourish you. You're not running from the world, you're returning to yourself. It's at this crucial point that you stop being an automatic reactor and become a conscious creator of your own experience. You stop being molded by external circumstances and begin to mold your reality from your internal center. People who feel uncomfortable with your new emotional absence reveal something important. They never really loved you. They loved the role you played in their lives. They loved the problem solver, the emotional available one, the one who never says no. And now that you no longer fit in that limiting box, they don't know what to do with you. And that, paradoxically, is completely liberating. Because you realize that losing people who only valued you for your utility isn't really a loss, it's liberation. You distance yourself from superficial relationships, but you reconnect with your deep essence. You become misunderstood by some, but you finally begin to be respected by those who really matter. Because when you're no longer available for anything at any time, you become valuable, rare, memorable. People who truly value you will begin to treat you with the respect you always deserved but never demanded. This is an authentic rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you no longer accept emotional crumbs, where you don't participate in toxic mind games, where you don't tolerate emptiness disguised as affection. Now you only accept what genuinely resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your newly discovered integrity. Jung knew this process isn't easy, but it's absolutely necessary for anyone who wants to live an authentic life. Because as long as you keep living to please others, you'll never discover who you really are when no one is watching. Here's a powerful exercise to accelerate your individuation process. For the next week, every time someone asks something of you, before responding automatically, take 30 seconds to connect with yourself. Ask yourself, does this nourish me or drain me? Am I saying yes from love or from fear? Would this person be here if I weren't useful? And here comes the most important part. Act based on your honest answers, not on what you think you should feel or do. Because individuation is precisely that. Learning to trust your internal compass more than external expectations. Do you know what's the clearest sign that you're progressing in this process? You begin to feel a peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances, a calm that doesn't break when someone gets angry with you for setting a boundary, an inner security that doesn't waver when you lose the approval of people who never really knew you. And gradually, something magical begins to happen. You attract completely different people, people who value you for who you are, not for what you do. People who respect your space, who honor your time, who celebrate your authenticity instead of trying to change it. Because here's the beautiful paradox of individuation. When you stop desperately needing others' approval, you naturally attract approval from the right people. When you stop seeking love from scarcity, authentic love finds its way to you. Jung understood that this process of becoming yourself isn't selfishness, it's responsibility. Because only when you're authentically yourself can you offer something real to the world. Only when you've healed your own internal fragmentation can you contribute to healing external fragmentation. And that's where you realize that this whole process wasn't really about distancing yourself from others. It was about getting so close to yourself that any relationship you build from that place will be infinitely deeper, more genuine, more nourishing. Because when you live from your authentic essence, you don't need masks, you don't need performances, you don't need to exhaust your energy trying to be someone you're not. You simply are, and that's enough. More than enough, it's extraordinary. The great truth Jung wanted us to understand is this: you didn't come to this world to be an improved version of what others expect from you. You came to be the most complete and authentic expression of who you really are. And that expression doesn't need anyone's approval to be valid. If this message has touched something deep in you, if you've recognized parts of your story in these words, if you feel something inside you awakening and reclaiming its right to exist authentically, then write in the comments, "I choose my authenticity." Because that's the first step toward real freedom. Recognizing that you have the power to choose who you want to be, instead of simply reacting to what others expect from you. Individuation isn't a destination, it's a path. And every day you choose your peace over others' chaos, every time you choose your truth over the comfort of lies, every moment you choose your authenticity over the security of the mask, you're walking deeper toward who you really are. Are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even criticized in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being genuinely yourself? Because that price, although it sometimes feels high, is infinitely smaller than the cost of living an entire life as someone you're not. Jung taught us that the greatest human suffering doesn't come from external circumstances, but from betraying oneself. Every time you abandon yourself to please others, every time you betray your truth to maintain a false relationship, every time you silence your authentic voice to avoid conflicts, you're creating a wound in your soul that no external approval can heal. But he also taught us that we have the power to heal those wounds by returning home to ourselves. And that home isn't a physical place, it's a state of being where your worth doesn't depend on others' opinions, where your peace isn't conditioned by external circumstances, where your self-love doesn't need external validation to exist. If this video has planted a seed of transformation in your heart, if you've felt even a glimpse of what it could be like to live from your total authenticity, then don't let this inspiration fade. Subscribe to this channel, activate notifications, and share this message with someone you know needs to hear it. Because real transformation isn't a single event, it's a daily practice. It's the constant decision to choose yourself, to honor your truth, to protect your energy, to value your peace above others' comfort. And remember, the path to authenticity isn't easy, but it's the only path to a life truly worth living. A life where you don't have to pretend, where you don't have to exhaust your energy being someone you're not, where you can wake up every morning knowing you're living your truth, not others' expectations. Your journey toward individuation begins now, in this moment, with the decision that you're no longer going to betray yourself to make others comfortable. And that decision, although it may feel small, has the power to completely transform your life. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't whether others will accept your authenticity. The question is whether you're ready to accept yourself and live from that radical acceptance of who you really are.